So I'd like just for the sake of kind of saying who you are, what organization you're with, and your title would be great, and then we're going to just start the panel. So we'll go ahead and go down the line.
I'm John Coomey. I'm with Stanford University.
Kenny Twidwell with McKesson.
I'm Rocco Alonzi with Sun Life Financial.
Jason Vitale, Barclays.
Paul Nally, Barclays.
And Scott Killian with AOL.
Great. So what I want to talk to the folks about on this panel today is really what were the drivers for doing this? What were the benefits that these folks saw to participate in the Uptime Institute server roundup? And also, we're going to talk about some other things like what were the roadblocks. I said it once, I'll probably say it a dozen times. Unplugging the wrong server can be a career-limiting move. So how do you do this with discipline? To steal a phrase from the gentleman from Barclays. And finally, what are you going to do next? What do you do next with this kind of IT capacity that you've gotten back, and now this new level of discipline that you're kind of applying to this? So let's start with the gentleman here from McKesson. What were the benefits to your organization to doing Decom in this way?
Well, I've been in this position. My official title is IT Hardware Retirement Coordinator. That's a nice fancy name. What does that mean? It's a nice way of saying I'm a babysitter. So basically, we have a 3-change process, and that's quarantine, decommission, and disposal. And there's a lot of moving parts in the decommissioning, so I kind of oversee everything. But it really put a spotlight on it, and to let everyone know that McKesson's doing their part. And 586 was quite a bit of improvement from the previous year, which was, I believe, 400 and something. So it was a good benefit. Thank you.
And Rocco, at Sun Life, why did Sun Life do this kind of decommissioning? What did you see? Financial benefit, better communication between the IT and the facility staff? What was it for you at Sun Life?
So I'm going to suggest this was not my first rodeo. We had done this in a previous life with Bank of Montreal before it became a server roundup, and the position there was basically to help a data center that was 28 years old and to see if we could expand a life. And we had gone through this and actually built a case study for Uptime way back in '08. When I got to Sun Life, one of the things that I recognized pretty quickly was a lot of groups working in silos doing a very good job with refreshing of servers, so I thought, and projects that were on the go, wanting to improve their situation from a server hardware perspective. But I recognized pretty quickly that there wasn't a lot of emphasis on wanting to remove servers off of the floor, and things were running in parallel for months, and in some cases we found some servers that had been there for 3 years plus just sitting there idling. So this roundup, when I started reading up on it, and you sent an email out to a couple of people with regards to it, it got everyone pretty excited wanting to do this and go after an award. I don't know if it's for the right reasons we did it, but absolutely we went and started rounding up our servers and putting a lot of pressure on different groups to help us out with this to get an award, and it really brought a lot of groups together. And one of the things that I really found was that this venue here to do this was something that has brought a lot of groups together. They're all waiting for the belt buckle when I get back to Toronto, but it was something that it really brought a lot of groups together, and we look forward to doing it again over the course of the years.
Great. And Team Barclays, 5,500 servers this year. Very impressive. And we've been talking about this for a while. For the months leading up to this, we had kind of back and forth about the documentation, how you're going to do it, and it was pretty exciting. There was a lot of excitement building about just how many you're going to do. So, just tell us kind of what were the benefits to Barclays, and why do you do decommissioning as a discipline there?
Well, primarily for us, we have a very diverse estate, and that the 5,500 was actually. We didn't actually report 1,300 extra that we had done that didn't get captured. But, it is what it is. But for us, we need to do this, right? Because building and expanding data centers is a very expensive proposition. Why not make the best use of your space by getting rid of stuff that isn't being used?
Money. They do. I was at one of these presentations before, and I heard the phrase that the greenest data center that you can ever build is the one that you never build. And so we have a mandate from the sea level down to build no more space. You can't sort of defeat the laws of physics. We don't have enough space, so we need to pull this stuff out. In terms of the challenges, decoms happen anyway. We can't take 100% credit for all the ones that we reported on. Had we not had a formal program in place, decoms would have happened to a certain degree anyway. What we're trying to instill in people, though, is to be way more assertive about it. We're trying to put a formal program together. I'm actually looking to get dedicated resource next year to do just decommissioning. It is sort of free money. There is risk involved. The adage of no one gets rewarded for turning off the wrong one. But it is sort of the analogy that I use is the sanitation department, right? If you're living in a town and you don't have a sanitation department, pretty soon you'll be standing in puddles of something that's very unpleasant. And that's the mode that we're in, where we need to clean up after ourselves as a discipline. We need to accept the risk. And one of the key things that we would explain to the senior management as we have to go in at that level to get their buy-off on the risk, is that there's short-term risk and long-term risk. If you flip the wrong switch, and we have, if you flip the wrong switch, you'll cause an outage. But if you leave it on the wire to just stagnate for another 5 or 6 years, when it eventually dies, we will not be able to recover it. So it's short-term potential risk versus long-term extreme risk.
And Scott, you guys win one more year, we're gonna have to get you the WWF belt buckle, the Hulk Hogan, 2-time reigning champ there on the amount of servers removed. What was the benefit for AOL?
Well, first I can tell you we've already done probably 4,000 this year. And that's we still have 7 more months to go. So the benefit for AOL is I get the advantage of coming after everybody else. The benefit is the same as everybody else has stated. It's financial, it's reclaiming space, it's reclaiming power, it's not having to build more space out. It's really all the above, and that's why we do it. That's why we started it. We kind of started at a necessity, which I've heard. We were overflowing at the gills. We didn't want to build another facility, particularly since we knew we had all these servers out there. We measured it. We knew the server utilization on average was 4, 5, 6% through most of the complex. So we knew it was there. So the benefit to us was really to get buy-off, and it's the people. We really couldn't have done it without the people buying in, so that we could proceed and just continue the process. So now for us, it's a program, as was stated. It's something that's kind of expected. It's at the point where it kind of replenishes itself every year, and we just keep it going that way.
I'd like to turn it to John now for a minute. One of the things, John, this has been something that you've been passionate about, our founder Ken Brill, very passionate about, and this is one of those things that I talked about on the first day, improving data center efficiency from kind of like the lens of the PUE. Let's fix the stuff that's on the left side of the decibel. What is that kind of, to your mind, why is it important to chase this kind of IT efficiency down?
Okay, so the big picture on the overall efficiency of data centers is that, at least for new facilities, we've almost solved the infrastructure problem. So we've got PUEs for new facilities coming in, in the best case, 1.04, 1.1, Google's at 1.13, something like that. So the insight is that we're doing a great job, and we're at the point where we can move away from focusing on the 0.1 and start focusing on the 1. And the first thing you want to do to focus on the 1, namely the IT part of the equation, is to figure out what is just flat out waste. Which devices are just sitting there doing nothing. And it turns out that these are pretty big numbers. I wanted to ask the panel, what percentage of your servers typically, like if you go through this process, what percentage did you decommission this time? Not just raw numbers, but what percentage? Is 10 to 30% a reasonable number? That was Ken's initial guess going back several years. The numbers that I've seen indicate that closer to the higher end is probably right, but I'm interested to hear people's perspective on that.
I would say about 10%-ish. It just depends on, we have a program in place, server refresh, so it just depends on the amount of workload and when they can do it with the different customers and the time frames. And so we have currently for this year, I believe 1,000 servers that we're trying to refresh. So it's a process, it takes time. So, and as those complete and they get off the old infrastructure, old equipment, then they will, submit an incident, and that's where I pick it up and start tracking it. So,
In our case, we reclaimed back service from an outsourcing position that we had in our data centers, and this has been our first cut since we took it back in 2011, and it was 40% of the servers, and this is true servers that were sitting there, not a refresh program at all. That's a little different for us, but it was truly servers that were sitting across 3 data centers, just humming away with the lights on and contributing to keeping the other servers warm while they were in the data center.
Yeah, for us, it was probably similar. 10% doing absolutely nothing, but another 20% or so maybe hosting a static web page or an FTP job from way back when, who even knows if it's still in use. So some micro workload that you could, with a small amount of human effort, you could eliminate it.
And for us, it's similar. When we started, again, we started this probably now 3 years ago. There's probably upwards of 30%-ish underutilized. I'll say underutilized, John. I won't say zombies, because they were doing something. They just weren't doing much of anything. For now, it's a lot less because we're on a program, like we said, and it's mostly refreshing stuff. So we're finding very few of them that are really zombies. There's still quite a few that are underutilized, but not many that are really just flat out doing nothing.
So one of the things I wanted to get at here, everybody on this panel seems to have, this isn't their first rodeo, and you've actually done this, and you have dedicated resources to it. It's a process. You've kind of developed some understanding throughout your organization of what you're doing and why you're doing it. But what were those initial roadblocks in getting buy-in from the IT side, from the application owners to do this? And what were the other challenges of even just finding these things? Do you just go around, unplug it and nobody screams, it's good to go? I mean, how do you find them? Just the challenges to doing this in your own organizations.
Well, there's a good number of challenges, and just like you said, there is a little bit of, well, anybody screaming? No, but you have to have documented as much as possible. That's why having a good DCIM is key, but also it's also the back-end data. Having, polling the servers, what is it doing, understanding that, and identifying what that is it really being used, who's using it, and then communicating with the users and getting their understanding as to why we need to do this and why this is important to have it done. And it's a lot of, one-to-one conversations, but you got to also have it at the right level and have top-level mandate or top-level buy-in.
I think the biggest roadblock for us when we got started was, quite honestly, the people, as you said. It was getting them to buy in and getting our executives to buy in. There were other things on roadmaps that had way more, interest for people to do, way more, it was actually developing revenue and stuff like that. So getting people to commit and do stuff that they really don't like doing. They'd rather develop the next greatest thing and not worry about, managing the infrastructure that they have. So that was the biggest thing. But once we got over that hurdle, we really don't have any dedicated resource anymore doing this. It's just become self-sustaining. There's reporting that shows utilization of servers. They know they're going to get targeted if they're underutilized. So it kind of drives itself now. So it's, I think, I don't know if that answers the question, but I think it's.
Yeah, so I took the same approach as I did when I was with the Bank of Montreal into Sun Life, and what we did specifically, and again, no dedicated resources, we brought in a couple of university students to basically do a book-to-floor audit of all the servers. And that happened over a course of 3 months. And it was under a supervision of someone within my group to ensure that they were just basically eyeballing hardware and not necessarily unplugging anything. Once we did that, we took that information and started to cross-reference based on applications. And again, all this data is 80% accurate that we were finding. But the bottom line was, once we had gathered all the facts and information and we had some question marks around a lot of our hardware, it was basically work, and it was work that we had to do with our service providers, so our server people, our network people, and even our storage guys. And literally having to drag them in some cases onto the floor and point to a cabinet and to a server or to a bank of servers and say, what are these doing? You're the support people. When something goes wrong, you're going to come here and fix it. Have you ever come to row 9, aisle 16, and look at these servers at all? And it does take some time, and it took some work, and it was over a 3 to 4 month period, but we were very confident at that point that when we did shut something down, that basically it was doing nothing at that point. And we were pretty successful, but it wasn't overnight, obviously. And it has served us pretty well, and we will continue to do it that way, at least from an audit perspective.
Part of the challenge in getting people, you know, an easiest way to find yourself alone in an empty room is to call a meeting about server retirement. People don't understand the challenge. So we have a couple of sort of marketing sort of tricks that we do. So when we had the conversations with the sort of C-level suite, we would tell them what 5,000 servers means. We would say, we wouldn't talk in terms of kilowatts, we'd talk in terms of dollars, and we would say, that's half of our largest facility, right there. So we do this in 1 year, that's half, so you've piqued their interest. We have a cabinet that we wheel around to where the IT folks are, obviously outside of the data center, and we put in there side by side something that's, you know, 7, 8 years old, still, you know, we still have lots of them, and something that's modern. And, you know, people are by nature, IT developers especially, they're forward-looking. They want to do the shiny new thing. They don't want to talk about this. And everyone thinks in terms of, for example, Moore's Law. They look at it going forward. Oh, things are going to be twice as fast 18 months from now. Well, if you use Moore's Law in reverse, well, 18 months ago, things were half the speed. And if you do a few iterations of that, you know, 7 years is, what, I think five Moore's Law cycles. And so you find yourself at something that's about 3% of the capacity of something that's contemporary. So if you extend that out to, let's say, a modern car that's 300 horsepower, you have it 5 times, that's 20 horsepower, you're back at a Model T. So people kind of, when they see side by side something that's 14U high, and you tell them that it has roughly the same amount of compute power as the high-end tablets that people have today, they go like, okay, now I get it.
I guess for me, the biggest roadblock is, you know, always is trying to find an owner of a system, whether it be a, you know, a Windows box, a Unix box, a Linux box. We've dwindled that list down quite a bit, but there's still, you know, quite a bit out there that we're still searching for. And, you know, we come across servers that are, you know, it could be 10, 15 years old, and it's a matter of finding who owns the actual server. So that's the biggest challenge. And like I said, that'll weed itself out, and eventually we're getting rid of all that with server refresh. We're identifying those, and we're slowly getting those all off the floor. So that's it.
So one of the things I'm hearing from everyone is that there's a need for better tracking, inventory tracking of what you've got. I know in some data centers, you go to them and you say, how many servers do you have? And they actually can't give you an answer, right? Now that's a rare situation, we hope, but probably not as rare as we would like it to be. Is there any other kind of software that you can imagine that could make the job of finding these low utilization or comatose servers easier? Can you imagine bots that could be sent out over the network to poll different devices to figure that out? Was there software that you used to help identify the target servers?
I don't think we're still at the point, I think, where if you look at the original stat of we're thinking that there's 10 to 30% out there. Once you start, my feeling on that is that once you start complicating the ask currently, maybe when we want to get from that 30 to 40 to 50, we need something. But right now, I think that the underuse is so egregious that if you complicate the ask and you go to the CIO and you say, hey, I want to install a fat agent in every box to help me figure out, it's not going to work, right? We do have some rudimentary agents running on our systems that tell us raw compute usage, and so we get like an average CPU utilization, those kinds of things, and I think we find that sufficient. Someday it may not be. We might want to go north of that, but until we've exhausted, as soon as you say, I'm here to clean up the bad servers, but I need to put a fat agent in every box to help me do that, it's going to be a very tough conversation.
For us, we, a couple years ago, we used to just use an Excel spreadsheet to track all of our servers, and we finally went to a database. And I do know we do run like a DDMI agent that identifies servers, tell you the name, make, model, serial number, and all that. So, but since we've gone to a database, it's gotten a lot better.
We basically have taken an SMDB database, and we went to our applications people and got all the apps that we're running. And again, through a student and someone supervising them, we mapped the critical apps to what servers they were running. And we're not there yet. We're close. We're probably 90%. But it did help us understand when we took all those servers, which was now a cut of about 60, maybe 65% of everything that was on the floor. We targeted that 35, 40% of servers and said, okay, so what are they doing? Because we can't map them to anything we have. Again, it was work, and it was work that we had, some people, third-party students, do for us under our supervision, and then we took all that information and road mapped it back to the server, storage, and network guys. So now we've got a very good database that we expect that moving forward, we think we probably won't be up on this stage again because we don't believe we'll have that many servers to acclaim moving forward. But that mapping right now is something that we keep very tight with the server people.
I think I mentioned already, but we do have our configuration management system actually does all the tracking for us. We have an asset management system that targets age of servers, et cetera, and we do report on that. So we do actually have that data. We've been doing it now for, as I said, probably 3-4 years. I think we actually won we did. We won a Green IT Award for what we call our ORB database, which measures all the utilization on CPUs and memory, and then we report on that. We report on it by owner, by project, you could even go as far as the product if you wanted to. So that's how we really monitor and track and report. So that is something that we do have and we use.
So I want to turn to Jim for a minute. One of the things that we talk about is kind of multiple times improving the IT efficiency. And I want Jim to start it off, but everybody else to weigh in. What are you doing now on the procurement side? What can you do and what are you considering from a server standpoint that would improve that utilization and lower that energy bill on the IT side? And Jim, I'd just be curious to hear your position on it to begin with.
Sure thing. So again, I think if you recall from the presentation, it's actually a great time to refresh servers, and one of the big technology trends obviously is SSD. The industry will ship somewhere in excess of 60 million SSD units this year, 90% of which are going into client, which is a PC application, but there's still about 10%, which is say 5 to 6 million going into enterprise, either server or storage type applications. And again, you look at the numbers, the power consumption is 80% reduction. The IOPS is more than 100 times improvement, so it's actually a wonderful time to be utilizing that technology. So think about it from a the storage hierarchy, we have the CPU at the top, the DRAM at the, and then you have the hard drive. Now you have another layer, which is that solid state or that NAND memory. We talk about putting the hot storage in there. So think of if you're a video on demand company, for example, put all your new releases there, and you put the cold data in the hard drive. So you can use just another tier in your hierarchy. And I think one thing that I'd sort of like to understand too from the rest of the panelists here, if I may, is if you're replacing a lot of these servers, let's say you find 1,000 underutilized or comatose servers, what is that replacement ratio? Are you replacing 100%? Is it 50%? I mean, now you've freed up capacity, you've freed up energy, you may have freed up some IT funds. I'd be curious to know how you go about sort of redeploying those resources moving forward. Hopefully it's 100%, by the way.
No, it's not, no. Our numbers last year are 8,200 decommissioned, roughly a little bit less than 5,000 added. And most of those were cloud-type infrastructure that we put in. So based off of that, we're now getting 5-6 to 1 compression on those servers as well. So the computing capacity is way up while we clean out what we refer to as the technical debt with the older servers. So that's kind of the year before was a little bit higher because we were deploying more and more infrastructure to get ahead of the game. But it seems to be leveling at that kind of, it's probably more like 3 out, 1 in type of scenario is the way we're seeing overall.
Yeah, we're probably seeing 3 to 4 out compression ratio as well, although that's at the sort of macro level. Some applications are just flat out decommissioned and they go the way of the warrior. But one thing I think it's important, we're trying very hard. There's one of the cultural challenges we're facing inside the firm is to sort of break the behavior of coupling decommissioning with sourcing new stuff. Because that gets you into what we call hostage exchange, right? Where people hold on to their stuff as ballast, and they know they don't need it, but they know that when they want 10 new servers, well, I'll give you back 15 of these pieces of crap, which I could have given back to you 18 months ago, but I held on to them because, so we're not looking at what's coming in. We're just still, because there's going to be lean years and good years in terms of acquiring new IT. But even in the lean years, you should be making, it's always to your benefit to be digging the hole.
Two things that we have done moving forward has been, as part of the project charter now, one of the last items is if we are putting in new hardware, the old hardware has to have a checky box that the project isn't closed until that hardware is removed. Our second piece is any of the hardware that we are now purchasing comes through the data center operations group. We don't make a decision on what they're buying because they've obviously gone through all the standards and work with the vendors, but we are going to tie that hardware to, is there a project assigned to it as opposed to it's just landing on the dock and they bought it because it was a fire sale and someone had a good deal for us. So we're not doing that at all. We've actually gone away from that. And we challenge a little more to the point that's being said here is if you're putting something in, something's got to come out unless it's a net new project or a new business that we've taken on. At that point, we don't see it as growth. We see it as unplanned growth coming to us. So we'd have to react a little differently.
Yeah, for us, we're almost 2 to 1. We're almost installing 2 servers for every one we're taking out. We kind of 2012 was a busy year, and that includes, business as usual and colo customers and everything. So right now we installed almost 1,000 servers last year and took out 568. So.
I'd like to open up to the crowd for any questions because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to see if there are any for the panel up here. Yes, right there. A mic coming to you.
So congratulations to everybody on their success. I'm hoping to get my company, Akamai, to move forward on server decommissioning. But one thing I haven't heard from the panel is kind of an upstream process for maybe gating new applications requests and the servers and tying ownership to those applications up front and creating that record so that over time you can keep going back to the owners and and ask them if they're still doing useful work? And also, how do you handle virtualization? Because that seems to me to compound the problem significantly.
Well, I mean, I can only speak for us. I know that during our build process, we have our build team works with the application owner to get the service or the application mapped in our central database to that device. That is not to say at some point down the future they can go and make a change and get their service removed and orphan, quote unquote, the server. But it's done at least at Barclays right at deployment.
Actually, server orphan is a particularly serious part of this problem, and it's one of the things that we had to deal with at the highest levels of the organization, because the problem with the orphan server is who signs off on the ticket to turn it off. There is nobody by default, so if you cannot find who it is, you need the hall pass from up on high to do something aggressive with that server. So at the point of entry when things are built right now, we look to get all the information that you're talking about. In terms of, we're not focused, you had a question about virtualization. Our group internally is not focused so much on the virtual. It is, I think it's a big challenge. I think at the very least with old hardware, you can take a photograph or look at all this junk and show it to people. The virtual problem is invisible. It's harder to show people what is going on. We do have lots of virtualization platforms, but the ownership model is similar. You're not allowed to light one up without signing the various forms saying you own it. And then for most of our virtual platform, we have the concept of leasing. So when you build a virt, you say I need it for a year or whatever. When that year comes up, it comes back to the original requester saying, do you still need this?
Get to another question if there's one in the crowd. Right there. All right, great. There's a mic coming to you.
Are any of you guys implementing a hard stop, like basing it on when, if you're leasing your servers, at the end of 3 years, does everything get reviewed? Is there an automatic decommissioned implementation strategy? Has anybody thought of that or looked into that?
So as I had explained in 2011, we took back on an outsourcing deal to reclaim service. And part of that was looking at all our hardware infrastructure and stuff that was either purchased or leased. And if they were greater than 3 years, now we were looking at a refresh program. The award that we got and how we did it was basically servers that weren't doing anything. But we do have a plan in place that year over year we are refreshing our hardware. And we're doing about 250 servers a year, physical servers a year now, that we're looking at our refresh program, and it is a 3-year plan for us. So we go back to the business and basically we sit down with them and say, here's where we're at, our lease needs to be upgraded to new hardware, and we work with them. So yeah, there is a plan in place for that.
Same thing for us. I think the answer is yes. Yeah, it's our intent is to not let anything go past 4 years if we can avoid it, and it means dealing with the customers and we notify them of such and everything, but that's refresh no more than 4 years is kind of the norm now for us, as that's what we try and accomplish.
Unfortunately, we're not there. I would say when you get into situations where to eliminate an older server, you have to do replatforming on the application or recoding of the application. Those things take a long time. So we are trying to get into a mode whereby we're putting together a whole obsolescence management stream to let people know where their older servers are. But in terms of a hard cutoff, that might be down the road as an evolutionary point for us.
So we're actually, we're going to run on time, but I want to let everyone know here. You can recognize these folks. First of all, how about really recognize them with a big round of applause for the work they're doing? But also recognize, you see their faces, they've been 10 foot tall on the screen, for a half hour this morning. Please follow up with these folks throughout the course of this week. Talk to them and learn. We're going to, also I believe the folks at AOL will be talking in the Samsung booth this afternoon, kind of presenting some of the details of their project. So in the expo hall, follow up there. You can go onto the website for Symposium. There's a tab for the server Roundup where we're going to have the videos of Scott there as a zombie server there. So there's going to be resources for you, so please follow up on the symposium website and the details of the award winners, and thank you. We're going to break out into technology innovation presentations, but I'd like to thank the panel and thank our sponsor, Samsung. Thank you.